Hey there. So I've seen the topic of whether or not I need a recording console in my studio covered a lot here on the internet. And I thought I had a bit of an opinion on this. And I thought, someone listening to this or watching this could actually maybe benefit from what I have to say. So I started recording myself maybe about 10 or so years ago, and drums is my instrument. It's the only thing I can play. And obviously, when I got into recording, I knew that drums have a lot of elements. You're going to need a lot of microphones for those elements. And the easiest way, my understanding was to get some sort of console. At that time, it was a very small footprint Behringer mixer, and get a bunch of mics, record straight to that, and there's your answer. And that's kind of still how I do things now, and my opinion on that hasn't really changed. I'm in the position now where I get to use a console all the time, and I've also been in the position where I had to use just mic preamps going into an interface. At the end of the day, it really does come down to what you're needing to do. And I feel like if you are looking for a console, you're either going to be recording bands or, I guess a group of musicians or, a source that has a lot of inputs and maybe inputs that need to be monitored in real time with a lot of different headphones, or you are someone who needs to record drums and want a lot of mic preamps kind of at an easy cost. So in my time recording drums, recording through a console is pretty much invaluable. It saves me a lot of time in the long run. I use EQ on every channel going in. For me, committing on the way in saves me a lot of time, and I don't really get to second guess myself in the long run because the sound is kind of already there. And that's not to say you can't go in after the fact and sculpt it, you really can. So these days there's a lot of option out there for recording, and for me, I've kind of come to the conclusion that I will either always have some sort of console, or some sort of format where I have a lot of mic preamps with some EQ on the way in, or I would then upgrade to an Apollo rig and have, 16 unison mic preamps on the way in, so I can kind of color my sound like that. But either way, both of those options are actually kind of pretty pricey, so it sort of depends what you want to do. But I thought the best way, and no one really seems to have done this from what I can find in other videos, they kind of just give you their opinion on either owning a recording console or not owning one. But I thought I would show you a comparison between how I record on a console and how I would record through an interface. So the recording console I'm going to be using today is the Midas Venice F32. So this is a 32 in and out console. It does have Firewire. That is no longer compatible with anything as far as I'm concerned. So I literally just go in through the mic pre's, EQ, and then go through the direct outs into my Clarett 8 pre, which then through ADAT is connected to an M Audio Profile 2626, giving me a total of 16 ins going into Pro Tools. So for a couple of years there, I wasn't able to use this console. I'd moved away and I wasn't bringing the console with me. So I primarily just used the Clarett. Now it's a really interesting way of working after you've gone from having EQ on every channel and some pretty nice mic pre's as well, to going to something where you don't even have phase or a pad or any kind of control on the front. You don't even have phantom power per channel. It's literally in banks of 4. And I use ribbon mics, so you got to be kind of specific with the way that you're going to actually lay out your tracks, even just going into the computer. So the way I'm going to do this comparison is 2 separate takes to the same song, one take through the Clarett and one take through the console. So the mics I have on the kit is a Shure Beta 52 on the kick out and a Shure Beta 91 on the kick in. Snare is SM57 top and bottom. Floor tom is a Sennheiser 421. Overheads are a pair of AKG 241s, and I have a mono Royer 121 clone over my shoulder. So when you hear the Clarett, keep in mind those mics are just going directly into the back of the thing with the gain, that's it. But then with the console, keep in mind you're going to actually hear the mic pre and then the EQ to kind of sculpt the sound and actually commit going in. So obviously you might think that's not a really fair comparison because the Clarett doesn't have any EQ on the way in. But too bad, that's what a console is great at doing. If you want to sculpt your sound on the way in and have, have more control before the fact, then you're going to want a console, ideally. So it's kind of not a fair comparison, but they're not really comparable things in a sense. They do the same thing, but depending on your needs, one does a lot more in a sense. And I think you kind of get a lot more value for your money in a sense. But in saying that, I think the Clarett sounds really good, and the sound going in isn't actually, it's not too bad. It's obviously with the console audio, you kind of hear it's already kind of mixed in a sense. You could send those stems out, you could send those tracks out and be kind of happy. And that's how I go about doing remote sessions. When someone asks me to record on their song, I give them the raw tracks, but those raw tracks are actually still going through some EQ just to kind of tidy the drums up a little bit, get them to sound a little bit more desirable. I'm not really going too crazy of anything and kind of committing, with this bass drum's going to have massive low end or anything like that. It's more to get rid of some of that 350 hertz, that sort of beach ball sound, and just to kind of clean stuff up. Stuff that's going to have to be done later on anyway. If you're recording straight into an audio interface with no EQ or anything on the way in, you're going to have to do all that stuff anyway, and then do all your sort of sculpture, kind of committing to the sound you're kind of chasing. This is actually really interesting to do because I haven't compared the two before, and I feel like the Clarett is kind of sounding a lot better than I remember. It's honestly a really great unit, and for anyone kind of wanting to look at an interface, I think the whole Clarett range is so good. It's nothing like the Scarlett range at all. So that kind of gives you an idea of why you might want a recording console over not having one. And I think what I've just proved there is you can definitely record straight into some mic pre's and do everything in the box. And I haven't even, as I said, I haven't even touched any of those drums going through the Clarett yet. They're already sounding pretty good. And of course, a very helpful tip is have your instruments sounding the best they possibly can, even before a microphone gets to pick up a single note. It really does help and probably is a big contributing factor to this video. So for me, I definitely like having a console in the studio. It's sort of a necessity now. It saves me a lot of time. I can just kind of commit to sounds. Another big one too is I get to do my headphone mixes directly on here. No such thing as a latency when it's coming straight from the mics into the console and straight back into your ears. Another big benefit for me with the console is when I'm in the studio rehearsing. So when I play live, I've got my in-ears in and I've got a full mix of the drum kit. So when I rehearse in here, I like to have that exact same situation so I can actually, it's like you're practicing for the gig. And, if I had to run mics into the interface, I'd then have to pull up my laptop and actually, do like a headphone mix. But with the console, I just turn it on and the mix is ready to go. So there's a lot of benefits for me specifically for having a console here in the studio. So I guess if you're watching this and you're in the position of wondering if you should buy a recording console or not, I guess the big things are you actually going to need the use for it? Do you have multiple inputs? Do you want to be able to EQ on the way in? Do you want to be able to do headphone mixes? So I hope this video was beneficial to some of you, and it was beneficial to me because I actually got to, compare some of my gear that I've been using for quite a while, and, just taking that time to actually listen and kind of figure out that, yeah, I think I am making the right decision by the way I am recording. Thank you guys so much. We'll see if I ever make any more YouTube videos because this was hell. Nah, it was all right. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I might see you again in the future.